Welcome to the Inspired Hygiene Podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Wall. I'm an RDH and founder of Inspired Hygiene. For over 20 years, we've had the unique opportunity to see what really happens inside thousands of dental hygiene ops and what it takes to create transformational change that impacts the lives of patients, practice owners, and teams. Each season, we'll focus on one powerful topic, breaking it down with practical strategies, real stories, and tools you can use right away. Let's get into it. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Inspired Hygiene Podcast. I am super excited to be here today with Emme Sanders. Hi, Emme. Welcome.
Hi, Rachel. I'm so excited.
I am too. So I want to introduce you properly. Emme is a dental hygienist. You are a lead coach with Inspired Hygiene, and you have been for, almost 10 years now. We have had the great opportunity to work together. And one of your newest ventures is you are also a partner in Collaboracon, which is a new, really dynamic event experience that I would really encourage everybody to check out, Collaboracon. And you've got an event coming up. When is your next Collaboracon event?
November 14th and 15th in Nashville.
Okay, in 2025. Awesome. I love that. So yeah, everybody be sure and check that out. And today's episode is a continuation of the conversation on hygiene compensation. This is a very hot topic that cannot be overstated. And I really wanted to bring you on to talk about this transition of paycheck to partnership. And so I'm going to tee this up just a little bit, and then we're going to talk about some specific examples and give folks some things to really think about and some specific tips as they are considering a transition for their hygiene compensation model. So over the last 5 years, there has been a dramatic change in the level of compensation that dental hygienists in the U.S. are requesting and expecting. And I believe that there needed to be some adjustments to that even before 2020. What we saw, though, is a combination of supply and demand really was really driving that. I think early on, driving that increase in hygiene compensation, and it is what it is right now. I don't expect, unless there are significant changes in the dental hygiene profession, that's another podcast, I don't expect that those compensation levels are going to go down anytime soon. And so what it's revealing is that practice owners can no longer ignore that part of their practice and just, ignore the fact that their hygiene department might not be profitable. In a heavy fee-for-service practice, likely it was okay prior to 2020 that if the hygienist was just doing prophy and bite wings, they might not have been all that profitable, but it could be something that was just kind of running in the background at a practice, and it really didn't get the practice owner's attention unless they had a specific advisor that was pointing to that part of the business. But now, with fee-for-service practices, and especially with heavy in-network practices, the level that hygiene compensation is at now is getting the attention of the practice owners in a big way.
Yes.
And they are asking, can hygiene be profitable where we are now? And that leads us to this conversation, and it leads a lot of them to consider, rather than an hourly paycheck model, to go to more of a performance-based compensation model for hygiene. Are you seeing that in your experience and with the clients you're working with? I'd love to know your thoughts on that.
Yes, I am seeing that. That dentists, as practice owners are looking at everything. And, hygiene has the amazing potential to really be the driver of profit, but also be a great driver of how well we're serving our patient base. And so as long as we keep that in mind, that it's about the patient first. It has to be about the patient first. I think everybody wants to be compensated for what they offer, what they bring. And they deserve that, right? We all have families and we all eventually want to go on a vacation and have all those great things. But we cannot ask for that until we keep the patients in mind first. And so that's why I love the partnership part, right? That's the easy way to put the patient first.
Because we can be partners in care and partners in diagnosis with the doctors. I'm speaking of hygienists and doctors, and also partners in doing well, right? By doing well for our patients. So that brings us to that triple win that we so often mention at Inspired Hygiene. And I've used this example in the past is imagine if a dentist was seeing all these different patients throughout the course of the day, but the only procedure that they were doing on those patients was a one surface occlusal composite. So how would they feel about their day? Would they enjoy their day? Would they feel like their day is repetitive? They feel like they're doing the same thing over and over. They literally are doing the same thing over and over. And is that one surface occlusal composite in the best interest of every patient?
No,
it's not. So it's the same thing with hygiene, right? So when we look at the triple win, we say, all right, if we're looking at a performance-based compensation model, and we've seen this work well in practices, we've also seen practices that have an hourly based pay, and maybe they have some type of team incentive or something like that. So every practice is a little bit different. I do foresee, though, more practices going to this type of model, a performance-based model. So let's look at what the win is for all the parties. So what do you see as the win? What do you see as the win for the patient if the hygiene department is working in a performance-based model?
Well, I think the win for the patient is that partnership of, and again, we're talking about the dentist and the hygienist here. That partnership, they're getting 2 for 1, right? You want to have 4 eyes looking at the patient, 2 hygienists, 2 dentists. You want to have 2 minds thinking what's in the patient's best interest. So that's the win-win for the patient is take the paycheck side of it off and put in that partnership role. So if you were the dentist and I were the hygienist, we're partnering together to best serve the patient. I hope I answered that question well for you.
Oh, absolutely. I love that. And I think it goes back to that analogy too of the one surface composite is that pro fee is not in the best interest for every patient. And so one thing that we've seen is when the doctor and the hygienist are partnering clinically, right, for the best of the patient, and then they also are partnering in creating revenue for the practice that creates, and then the hygienist compensation is in relation to that revenue, then the hygienists are often going to look through a different light at that patient and see what other services would benefit them. I'm going to maybe think about that at a different level when I'm in a partnership, both from a clinical standpoint and a business standpoint. I think that often happens when that model is put in place. And so then for the patient, it creates more opportunity for care for the team to really think about what is in the patient's best interest and bring in new services, bring in new products and things that are going to exceed the prophy and bite wing, cycle that so many hygienists get stuck on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now,
one of the things that we could also just plug in here, that when you enter into this partnership relationship with your dentist or your hygienist, we have to have permission from both sides, right? The doctor has to give that hygienist or dental assistant permission to really step into their role as a healthcare provider and to also let them understand that they're not going to shoot them down in front of the patient. Right? So have that strategic conversation about, all right, if we're going to enter into this partnership, how are we going to do it beautifully? What are our boundaries around it? How can the hygienist make the dentist look great? And how can the dentist make the hygienist look great? Because if you can master that, that really is going to be the successful thing for the patient.
Because it's going to help the patient accept treatment when they see that these two trust each other and they have this very very seamless approach to their communication. They're agreeing with one another on the treatment that's being recommended. The hygienist is educating the patient ahead of time, ahead of the dentist coming in, on what they're seeing as potential needs. It just builds that comfort, it builds that trust, and it helps the patient say yes to what's in their best interest. So I think this partnership creates a ton of wins for the patient. It obviously creates wins for the hygienist because they have more influence over their compensation. And then it creates a win for the practice and the practice owner because production tends to be higher when there's a performance-based compensation model in place. Now, yeah, I'd love to talk. We have a specific example we wanted to go through, Emme, around that. But yeah, what would you share? What would you share on that win-win-win?
Well, on the win-win-win too, I want to speak specifically from a hygienist. When I was practicing, I was high volume. I really cut my teeth on high volume, get them in, get them out. We saw 4 new patients every hour, 2 hygienists and an assistant and a doctor. And that was high volume. It does work. I'm not saying it doesn't work, but after 8 years, I did get tired. And so then I went to a cosmetic dentist who gave me permission to be a partner, who taught me how to, for lack of a better word, how to play dentist, how to be him, so that when he came in, I had really taken that football, if you will, all the way down the field, and all he had to do was the touchdown.
Yeah.
And that's what it's all about. But what I gained as a hygienist was value. I slept better at night. I felt valued. I felt valued from the patients. I felt valued from the team, and most importantly from the doctor. And so when you can really partner and agree that that's what your goal is and how you're going to work together to support each other, everybody's going to gain value.
Yeah, and it's more interesting as a hygienist, right?
Yeah.
Because you when you said think more, you be more like the dentist, you were thinking like a dentist. Your dentist gave you permission, think like me, think like a dentist, and then took the time to teach you his philosophies, his knowledge and everything that he had gained through that experience and passed that along to you, and then really lifted you up in front of the patient by agreeing, right? When you teed something up, and I'm sure he would say, Emme, that was a great catch. I'm really glad you saw that. And I agree with you. I think it's time to do something here. And that really does, I have felt that value as well as a hygienist. And it's a really good feeling.
It is a great feeling.
And you feel like you're contributing to something that's bigger than yourself and bigger than maybe what you expected your role to be.
That's right.
Right. So, okay. So this partnership is a thing, and it can be a really good thing. Now, I talked about earlier about how practice owners are really paying attention to the business piece of the hygiene department very closely and really looking at how can we make this work from a profitability standpoint. So you and I have worked with several teams on these kind of projects. And it brings to mind, I know, it's very challenging, but it's very rewarding. And you've done such a great job. And that's why I really wanted to bring you on to this to share your experience with this. So kind of tee us up in this particular example, and let's talk through how you help them be successful through a transition of their hygiene compensation model.
Yeah. So this fantastic dentist purchased a legacy practice that had been well established for many, many years. But what he purchased was highly paid hygienist. And he quickly saw after just a few years, wow, this is not going to be something that's going to be, it's good for the hygienist, right? But it wasn't going to be something he could maintain that would be good for the practice. And so that's how he reached out to you, and you pulled me in on this, and we strategically planned, okay, what is your goal? And the good thing was the dentist's goal was he wanted to do right by the patients, but he also wanted to do right by his team, that while he inherited them, he had already grown to love them and appreciate them and what they brought to the table as well. So he didn't want to say, okay, this is not going to make it for the practice, so I'm going to cut your pay. Nobody wants to come out of the gate like that. So that's when he reached out to us, and we strategically planned, okay, if this your goal is for it to be good for everybody, the triple win, then what we have to do is we have to have careful conversations to make sure that everybody understands what's the purpose. The purpose is the triple win. Once we had that careful conversation, you and I were behind the scenes strategically planning, okay, if we do this, this will happen. And so essentially, they were paid high. They were also in that rut of the 11-10 and the exam. Then 6 months later, add in some bite wings, but they were in that rut. So compensation was high and their production level was kind of moderate, if you will. Then what we did was, let's give them something different, some new services to offer, and let's give them the tools so that they could do them really well. And as we offered new services, that production rose. And when it got, then we kind of balanced them out to where they were equal. I don't know if I clearly explained that well, but we raised their production by changing their services. And then we implemented a model that would support. And then here's the most fun part of all. And it's not about the money, right? It's about how well we serve our patients. And that's what this doctor wanted to do, was serve his patients really, really well as serve his team well. And so when they implemented these new services, now they're serving their patients really well. Side effect was positive production. And then these hygienists, once it all kind of flushed out and we changed that compensation model, if I remember correctly, we did it quarterly. We changed the model. So it wasn't a drastic today. It's a different model. It was stair-step approach, so that in the end, when it was all over, I believe all over said and done, maybe 18 months in, the hygienists were making more money than they were before, and their patients were better served. So it was like a win. It's the triple win.
Yeah.
Practice was happy. And I remember us having the conversation with the doctor. Well, how do you feel now that your hygienists are making even more money? He goes, well, it's great because the practice is too, and the patients are winning. So why would you not do that? So it's scary, but it can happen.
Yeah, it can happen. And what they did, so I'd love to kind of dive into this even a little bit deeper, is so it was scary, but they had a relationship. They had built a relationship. Inspired Hygiene and you came in right off the bat with an intent of creating the triple win. Because when this started, the hygienists were winning. They were, I'm just going to say it, they were making 50% of production, including the doctor's exams. And if you listen to the last episode on the hygiene profitability benchmark, you know that it way exceeds what we would recommend as a production a pay percentage. And it just wasn't sustainable long-term for the practice. So the practice wasn't winning. The patients weren't winning because they were not being properly diagnosed or put into the proper treatment that was in their best interest. So there was only one party that was winning. But when you approach it to say, our goal is for all parties to be winning, it's going to take an open mind. It's going to take some time, and it's going to take approaching this in a new way.
That's right.
And so you brought them the plan for tiering that down over time. So their percentage came down as their production went up.
That's right.
And then also gave them the tools, a firm perio protocol foundation, and then the verbal skills to communicate that to patients that they'd been seeing for years. And that's really what created that success. And so these transitions can happen. And there are critical communication points in these transitions that, like you said, have to be handled very carefully and very delicately. But that can happen. So thank you for sharing with that. That is really, I love remembering that story and that successful outcome over and over because it was very challenging. But we put a lot of thought into how we help that practice owner move through that. And the hygienist stayed.
Okay, can I share the behind the curtain,
Sure.
like from the
Yeah.
consultant? What we did, I don't know if you remember all these little juicy details or not, but I remember I walked down the hall, knock, knock, knock into your office, and I'm like, oh my gosh, we're in the wrong business. Look what these hygienists are getting paid.
I know. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
remember that. And then I also remember one of our strategic planning meetings before we actually got in there and got our work going. Uh, we were both a little afraid. Like we as consultants, we know it. We know what works. If you do this, this is the outcome.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had all those things lined up. We knew it was going to work. But I will tell you from my perspective, at that time, I had never, had been at that time my most challenging one.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so there's a little behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm.
Oh gosh, I hope it's going to work.
Yeah.
And you go back to your fundamentals. What you know works. When you work on this, this is the end result. When you do this, this is what's going to happen next. And so we just implemented all those things that we know work. It was just a multifaceted approach. So that's kind of the behind the curtains, the Wizard of Oz, if you will.
Yes. Yes. I mean, it is, it does, it is challenging even from our side because you know what works, the math works. Our Inspired Hygiene process works. We have case study after case study after case study of practices that have followed our recommendation. However, what you don't know is the human response.
Yeah.
You did not know how those hygienists were going to respond. However, because your approach was patient-centered, they saw that. They saw that you weren't coming in like a bull in a china shop, around this business can't sustain this and I can't believe you've been paid this. No, you came in a very loving way to say, here is what we're going for is the triple win for everyone. And if you will trust us in this process and stick this out, you will see the end result. And then you can make your decision if this is the right fit for you. And that's how that went. And it does, I would say, for dentists that are considering making a change in the compensation plan, you are going to need to communicate more than you think you should need to.
Yes.
You are going to need to spell it out very clearly and show your team multiple examples of how they can make the same or more in this new model. You will need to communicate how you're willing to support them to get to that and the decisions you're willing to make and the support you're willing to give them to get to that level. And then when you think you have done all of that enough, you're going to need to do it again.
Do it again. I was just going to say that same thing.
Yeah, you're going to need to communicate it again. And here's the reason is practice owners, you're used to running a business. You're used to spreadsheets. You're used to seeing the backside of things. As hygienists, we and dentists, you weren't necessarily trained on that, but you learned that because you had to, because you're a business owner. As hygienists, we don't typically have to learn that. And so it's not, you cannot expect your hygienist to just understand the spreadsheet and see all that. I would encourage you, take it off a spreadsheet, put it on a piece of paper, give them examples of, here's what our typical schedule looks like. We're going to give you the tools to expand our perio. We're going to bring in some additional services that we're never recommending anything that is not in the best interest of our patients. But even being conservative of this, here's where what we can get to. And here's where you, hygiene team member, can start to be able to influence your income and modify your income. Yeah. Anything you want to add to that?
No, it's going to take at least 7 more times to say it, like you say it over and over and over. Mm-hmm. And you think they don't get it. It's not that they don't get it. We as humans, when we're introduced to something new, it's going to take us time to process.
Yes.
And then it will cause us to think of a different, well, what if? And then we've got to come back with more questions. So, yeah, you got to say it, speak it, believe it, and not get frustrated. Resist the temptation to get frustrated when someone comes at us with a question. It's not that we're questioning you, right? So I'm speaking as a consultant. They're not coming to me to question me as a consultant. They're coming to me to question because they've thought about it in a different way. They're challenging new mindset beliefs, and we have to just reiterate, and it works. It works.
It does, and I will add to that too, is when they when the team, okay, so when we say the hygiene team is going through this change, it's everything that they've depended on, right? If they're used to coming in and clocking in and clocking out and depending on a certain amount of money, there are ways that you can structure this to give them a little more security than others. Some are ready to go and say, yeah, I'm ready to do percentage pay, and I'm they're on the starting line. They're ready to go. Like, they are motivated and excited. And then there's some that need more security, and there are ways that you can structure it around that. But you recognize that they're if this is impacting their family, this is impacting their ability to provide for their children and all of these things. So just put yourself in their position, that they've not thought maybe about their income and their influence over their income in this way before. It will also They will also start thinking about how they perform in the practice in a different way. So let's talk about some of those things that come up when these performance-based models are put in place, Emme. Some that are really awesome that you didn't expect, where teams really step up. And then some where they find loopholes and things that you never thought of when you were creating this model. And how do you maybe head those off ahead of time? So what are some of the I would say positive, and maybe some of the challenging things that come up once these types of models are implemented that you've seen with clients?
I will say this, the positives typically outweigh the negatives.
Okay.
Most all clients with their teams are surprised at the positives. And I think that's because we're always, as humans, we're kind of waiting for the shoe to fall off, right? Next shoe to drop. So I would say when you're going to change things, expect positive outcomes. Most clients receive positive outcomes and they're pleasantly surprised. That's the common.
Okay.
The uncommon might be someone strategically clocking out to lower their. So let's say a patient no-showed or last minute cancellation, maybe last one of the day, 4:00. So they would clock out to change that hourly rate portion of the formula.
Yeah. So I
We
think
want to
that,
resist that, right?
yeah,
Because
yeah.
while that's good for, again, let's go back to the triple win. That's good for that specific provider, but is it good for the patient? No,
Nope.
it's not. What we could have done is maybe got on the phone and reached out to some other patients because I had a change in my schedule for next week, or could have done something else. Or it could have been I did something on the positive for the practice. Maybe I'm helping a colleague who's 2 operatories down and 10 minutes behind schedule. Maybe I'm helping them with turning over a room or anything like that. So resist the temptation to clock out. That seems to be one of the more common ones that I see. Working through lunch. I see sometimes that hygienists or dental team members maybe would want to work through lunch to try to elevate that production. And how is that good for the provider? It's really not. You deserve a break today. Right. So have lunch to resist those
Take
little
a
theories that
breather.
manipulate the formula. It's not.
Mhm.
That's not how that's designed to be played.
I would say for practice owners, expect that some of those things are going to come up.
Mhm.
And if you can head that off early, that's even better. If you can just anticipate some of the things that might happen. And it is hygienists figuring out, it's they're figuring out, and now I have this influence over my income and I'm figuring out a couple ways that I can influence it in my favor. But we always have to think about the triple win, right? Just like you said. Is this really benefiting the patients in our practice and the practice as a whole? If it's not, then I need to rethink that. And if I see that, hey, we have a lot of downtime, a lot of open time on the schedule, and it's making it's creating a situation where the hygienist is unable to reach that level of profitability to where those income modifiers kick in, then instead of clocking out or manipulating the schedule, have a conversation with the leader. Say, here's where I'm frustrated. We put in place this model. I just don't see how I'm going to hit this goal because we have all this open time. So how can we work this out? So I would say both parties expect that some of those things are going to come up because they will. The more you can talk about them in advance, the better. One thing that I always recommend is having an agreement, a written agreement when you're going into this model for particular things. I will see one of the things that I've seen too, a fantastic hygienist who was extremely efficient and was able to see a lot of patients in her day. But what we discovered by accident was that she was going days without doing clinical notes. So she was leaving things that are required as part of that patient experience undone so that she could get more patients in and boost the production. So one thing that I always encouraged leaders to do is have a written agreement is, hey, we're going to do this and we're going to evaluate this in 90 days and see how it's working for all parties. And we might make adjustments, but we're going to see how this is working. And here are some agreements. Here are some things that I'm committing to as a practice owner and leader. Here are some things that I'm going to ask you to commit to. And let's really work on this together so that it is a triple win. And some of those things that you might agree to are, I'm going to agree that our business team is going to do everything that they can to help keep the hygiene department busy. But as hygienists, if you do have downtime, that is a really valuable thing that we would ask for you to do, is look through your patients maybe that had to be booked out for scaling and root planing a couple months and see if they can come in sooner. Look on the whatever system we're using to track recare. And if there are patients that are overdue and you recognize a couple of them, pick up the phone and call them. Really identify what are the valuable things that the hygiene team can do during that downtime that's going to contribute to their productivity and their income down the line.
That's right.
Because if we don't have those systems in place, then this is going to be a perpetual problem, right? How can we solve for that open time so that they are more productive and they're hitting those goals and seeing that income increase? So create some agreements around, we're not going to manipulate the schedule for our personal gain. If a patient urgently needs scaling root planing, if I diagnosed it and I don't have anywhere on my schedule for 4 weeks, but Emme has an opening in 2 days and that patient really needs care, I'm going to put them on Emme's schedule. And you know what? It's going to come back around, right?
No, it does.
It's going to come back around. There's going to be times that, Emmy's going to do the same for me. So, and if I'm seeing that my schedule is so booked out that this is happening repeatedly, then take it to the leadership. Say, hey, I really need to get some scale and root planning blocks on my schedule. Can you help me with that? So, rather than allow some of these things to create a slippery slope into a situation that creates unrest and drama in the team, if you see that there are things that are impacting this model from being successful, talk about it. Create solutions together as a team. Any last things you want to add, Emme, about that transition from paycheck to partnership? And where do you see Where do you see this benefiting our industry as a whole?
Okay. Partnership is exactly what we all must do in order to, this is going to get a little touchy right here. There are states. Yeah. I'm going to love on you. That's what I always tell my clients. I'm going to love on you. It might sting. Our industry, hygienists, there are some states who we are losing. I back up. I do not want to say losing. We are not losing. Other states are allowing others to do some of the functions of a licensed registered dental hygienist. And if we really want to maintain who we are as a profession, it is in our best interest to partner with our dentist. When we partner with them, when we communicate effectively with them, we are working toward the same common goal of the triple win. We're going to have more valuable, meaningful relationships, and I believe that we will have longer in our profession. We will be longer term in our profession.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I could not have said that better, and I agree with you 100%. And so I would say let's wrap it there. If this is something that you're struggling with in your practice and you love some guidance around making this type of transition, giving your team the tools to be successful in this type of model, we would love to have a conversation with you. If you go to inspiredhygiene.com, you'll see where you can book a discovery meeting, and I will personally talk with you, look at some of your hygiene data, and share with you how we can help, if we can help. And we'd love the opportunity to do that. But Emme, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. Thank you for just being you and for all you do for our industry. It's just, I can't thank you enough. And I appreciate you being on the podcast.
Well, thank you, Rachel. And, Inspired Hygiene, it's at my heart. So thank you for all you do for our profession.
Thank you. Take care, everyone. We'll see you next time. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Inspired Hygiene Podcast. We hope you got a ton of value and some things that you can really take away and implement now. So as always, we invite you, if we can help you in any way to optimize your hygiene department, head on over to inspiredhygiene.com. And as always, stay inspired.